everyone. This is Katrina VanHuss with the Seeding Social Good podcast by Turnkey for Good. Today we have with us Brian Winkie, the Executive Director of It Gets Better. Brian, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right, so let's get started. First of all, tell us about It Gets Better. What do you do? How did you start?
Well, It Gets Better is a nonprofit with a mission to uplift, empower, and connect LGBTQ plus youth around the globe. I'll talk a little bit about our pillars and focus in terms of programming. Many people know us from our original campaign. We were born out of a viral social campaign in 2010 on the heels of a youth suicide contagion. Many of these youth who had highly publicized deaths were perceived or were LGBTQ plus. That ultimately motivated our founder to create a video based on the simple fact that if he had 5 minutes alone with any of these young people that were grappling with this crisis moment, that maybe he could have inspired them to get through to another day. He knew that many of these young people were going through the same challenges that all LGBTQ plus youth go through while they're trying to affirm their identities, dealing with bullying, unaccepting families, and a variety of other social pressures. He thought that if he shared his experience and showed that, look, I went through this too, but these are the things that I did to take control of my life and move on and to become the successful adult that I am today. And so he recorded that video, threw it up on YouTube, which at the time was just known for cat videos. It wasn't known as this platform for social good. And he asked his peers and his colleagues to share their stories too. And hopefully this message would get out. But like 3 days later, thousands of people were starting to respond to his video and sharing their own experiences. This kept happening for the first 5 years of the organization. Over 50,000 people ultimately shared their personal stories of resilience and triumph for the betterment of LGBTQ plus youth, and has led to us becoming the world's largest storytelling effort to empower LGBTQ plus youth. Social media campaigns don't last forever, and they certainly don't last for very long these days. The fact that we were able to maintain momentum for 5 years after that first video was launched was a testament to the value of this message. But what we have done is we've evolved our work. We are still a storytelling organization at our core, but we also recognize that young people change. We grow up very quickly, and social media changes and tech changes, and the way that we consume media changes. We made a decision that we had this great arsenal of 50,000 stories, but we didn't want to become like this giant archive that would quickly become outdated. So there's a lot of things that we've done to evolve with the times. You know, there were platforms that didn't exist 15 years ago. TikTok wasn't around. And so these are all platforms that we have brought into our ecosystem because we know this is where young people are. And that's been the number one focus of this organization, is that no matter what, our goal here is to prove to LGBTQ plus youth that it gets better and they have a life worth living and a future with limitless possibilities.
So the storytelling is toward that end, to help people understand there's a future that is different from my present. But it feels like there's also a creation of a sense of belonging that must be very healing as well. Is that true?
Yeah, I think, when I was growing up in central Ohio, there weren't a lot of resources. There was no social media, no email. Our phone book, if anybody even remembers, that was like our portal to the world. There weren't a lot of resources. This day and age, it's easier to find a place where you belong. But trust me, young queer people are still going through the same things today that they were 15 years ago, that they were 20 and 30 years ago. There is this little thing called adolescence that makes everybody's lives more difficult. That hasn't changed in hundreds of years. And so, if not thousands of years, it's just part of our transition from youth to adulthood, and it's challenging. But the way that we can foster belonging, especially in the digital space, is really important, because one of the things that's missing from earlier generations is just knowing that there are people out there like you. In my high school, there was no evidence that anybody was out there. Weren't queer characters on screen. There's a variety of different ways that young people today can find validation and affirmation. But again, it's making sure that you can get in front of them at those critical moments when they're doubting
Yeah.
themselves and the world around them.
Yeah. So you have this body of work, the stories that you've collected and archived. How do people get to this?
We're on all social media channels. We are the leading LGBTQ plus nonprofit on YouTube, Twitch, and Tumblr. Our YouTube channel, all of our platforms are available at It Gets Better. If you go to Instagram, Facebook, or any of these major platforms, you're going to find us under It Gets Better. And so all of these stories, not all 50,000, mind you, because we didn't archive them. So many of these stories existed on people's personal channels. We did keep what we felt were the most inspirational, the most popular, the most impactful stories, and they are available on YouTube. We're also creating new stories every single day through other platforms. And when I say creating, we were producing original content for a while, but it wasn't ever based on us manipulating the stories. Our goal was to find people who had stories to tell and to be the voice or amplification tool for those stories. Today, it's all about short form content. Young people, even though YouTube is still high on the list in terms of popularity, there's shorter form content like TikTok that young people resonate with much more intensely than they did 15 years ago when it didn't
Yeah.
exist.
Well, if I were a researcher in sociology, I would look at that body of work and think there must be a lot of lessons that come out of all those stories. There must be a set of best practices for how to survive and how to be a family and things you should never do based on the stories that you've heard. Have you ever been able to distill that or attempted to?
I think everybody's story is different. I want to be careful not to lay out any one tactic or
Mhm.
strategy that was employed, because the goal is to help young people see a future for themselves where they are. There are so many stories that are when I left town, when I went to LA, when I went to New York, when I found my people in these major metros, my life turned around. But that doesn't often work out for everyone. There's preparation that's required. These things cost money. And my biggest concern is that people will flee their hometowns to find community and end up unable to support themselves. And so, as we all know, there are huge unhoused populations, that are LGBTQ plus. And so we want to make sure that people find community where they are, because LGBTQ plus people are everywhere
Yeah.
and we need to be able to find them. From a broader perspective, a lot of the earlier stories that were shared they appreciate the cross-generational exchange of wisdom, but when you think about how people are telling their stories now, it's not necessarily from a trauma perspective. It is more hopeful. It is not centering their life around trauma. Just nuance of how we've evolved as a community. There are still challenges, there's still traumas. We all get trauma growing up. That's unavoidable, LGBTQ plus or other. That's not unique to LGBTQ plus people. It just feels more intense and it's more common. But
Yeah.
there's an acknowledgement that the world is tough. Can we focus on joy? Can we find the strength to create the world that we want to live in?
Holy hell, I think you just told me something positive that's happening in the world today. I'm not sure I know how to take it in the midst of the rest of it. Use my nice words here. So, you've helped me understand how this helps LGBTQ plus populations, but what about the people who are not part of those populations?
There is a universal appeal of our work because the way I engage with parents, caregivers, and educators, I'm like, look, these are the experiences of LGBTQ plus young people, and you can better understand their experiences through the stories we are sharing. This content was created for you. It does have an educational component to it. All stories have a little smidge of wisdom, right? That
Yes.
an LGBTQ plus young people can apply to their lives, or an ally or a caregiver or parents or educator, what have you, can learn like, oh, well, that might be a role that I can support, or that might be something that I can help make happen
Yeah.
for a young person who's going through a difficult time.
I'm going to a wedding, not
Yeah,
this
good.
weekend, but next. My brother's child, who is now non binary, and Becca's getting married. And I have four brothers, so I was the only girl, which is to say I was the smart one.
Of course you were.
So my family dynamics range from as far right as you can get to me,
Right.
who's on the other end of the spectrum. The folks on the far right have expressed concern that there will be a lot of people doing what they do at this wedding. So give your counsel on that,
For you? How are you going to
or
navigate that?
about how to help it be a great experience for everyone and how to be an ally in the best sense of the word.
Yeah, it's really hard because I try very hard. I have a mixture of liberal and conservative in my family as well. And this isn't something that I would necessarily encourage someone to do at a wedding, because you're there for the couple. You want to celebrate them. And as much as you can
Absolutely.
get people to focus on the beauty of that moment, that's great. But when it comes to, and this is just personal experience, I know that we live in a very polarized time politically, and everything is presented as black and white. I've had many conversations with conservative members of my family, not because I want to or because I enjoy it, but I come at it from a place of just trying to understand. When you tell me that you are staunchly opposed to this, I just want to know more. And usually I want to know why. And usually what I found is, like, if you can get people to start talking about why, then there are moments for you to insert your why and why you don't agree. And there are opportunities to kind of meet in the middle. You don't have to agree. You don't have to change somebody's mind. The goal is just to find some kind of middle ground of understanding that you can live with and recognize that people are allowed to have their own opinions. I think the problem with the world today is exacerbated by, like, the 24/7 news cycle, by social media.
Yeah.
It is so easy to find people who believe you and to believe in your opinion. It's over validating, right? And it gives you a reason to kind of just say, hey, I don't care what you think. But we really need to fight against that. You don't have to agree with folks, but I found that it's a lot more productive to listen than it is to convince people to change their minds. Because what I
That's beautiful.
found is people just want to be here. People just want to be heard, right? And
Yes. Yeah.
both sides have their issues. Trust. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a liberal. I don't agree with all the things that are coming out from the left side of the aisle, but, best to just listen.
All right. So you mentioned politics. Let's talk about the before and the after. Before January 20th and after January 20th. That's when the executive orders started coming out. I'm not sure which specific ones impacted your organization and how quickly, but can you talk about that transition, what your experience has been since then?
Right out of the gate, It Gets Better has never received federal funding. We've never received federal funding. We have many colleagues, many peer organizations who essentially had the rug pulled out from under them as the government pulled some of their funding. So that, I wouldn't say that, outside of the emotional impact of what is happening this year, we haven't had a tremendous impact on our work. The way I see it, It Gets Better was born during a very progressive administration, the Obama administration. The reality is that political discourse goes like this. The pendulum swings, and it will continue to swing. But what LGBTQ plus youth are going through, what teenagers are going through, like I said, doesn't change. And we can't get distracted by what is happening at the White House. It's important to recognize what's happening and to understand how that is impacting the audience that we are trying to engage with. But our goal is to make sure that young people have the tools they need to navigate the world. And there are going to be people that are opposed to you and people that are going to support you. The goal is to recognize what people are bringing to the table and understand and have the confidence in who you are to deflect or accept.
Yeah.
So, like, when we talk about what's happening post January 20th, I'm getting a lot of, I'm so exhausted. I was wearing an It Gets Better hat the other day, and someone said, I don't know how you can confidently wear that right now. And I'm like, now is the time to wear it. Like, now is not the time to back down. You might not feel like it gets better or at least it's not getting better right now, but our success is measured in decades, and we need to remember that. And so I've been really focused on what can I do to support, especially the internal stakeholders of our organization, combat their exhaustion, the exhaustion that everyone is feeling with this constant barrage of crisis moments that are surfacing every single day. I don't know if that answers your question,
It
but
makes me want to ask
I
another one. Can we do this
okay.
weekly? And can you expand your mission audience to the rest of us? That's the most positive thing I've heard in weeks. So thank you for that.
We have our marketing kit and our identity guidelines, and we're supposed to be positive, but not Pollyanna-ish, But like, if you don't keep focused on what you're trying to do, it is so easy to get derailed. And trust me, I don't wake up every day excited about turning on the TV and what's going to happen and how that's going to influence my work or what statement I'm going to have to make in response to some horrible tragedy that's going to impact our community. Sometimes I just want to stay in bed all day. But I believe in this mission. From my personal experience, it can get better beyond your wildest dreams. You just have to believe it. And you don't necessarily need to honor it every day, but you just have, even if it's like this much, you just have to believe it gets better. Otherwise, what's the point? If there's nothing to strive for other than misery, what's the point? We got to keep people hopeful. Hopelessness leads to crisis.
So I had the opportunity back when the Glisten Target thing happened around Pride Month and Pride merchandise. Paul Irwin Dudek was my guest. He was at Glisten at the time. And that was really something. I'll link that in the show notes for folks. Talk to me about your corporate support. What's happened in the last 6 to 8 months in that realm?
Yeah, well, let me start with I love brand partnerships. I think they're fun. And if you can get people who understand bottom line objectives and are transparent about that, you can come up with these amazing strategies that is a win-win for everyone involved. And I think a lot of what's happening in the corporate space has been blown out of proportion. There have been some major issues like the Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light debacle, and then you have what's going on with Target. And going back to media, the problem is that we don't always get the full story. When you talk about Glisten and Target had been giving Glisten $100,000 a year for a decade, right? And on the surface, $1 million, that's a lot of money. But when you look at $100,000 over the course of a decade, that's $100,000. Like $100,000 today was like $130,000 10 years ago, right? In terms of just the value of money. So that partnership was starting to deteriorate anyways from a financially valuable campaign. But I also think that Target, if anyone had gone to Target, they do stuff for Black History Month, they do stuff for Pride, they do stuff for a variety of other things. And it's like, okay, it's like a kiosk with a few books and a few it's not what I would consider inspiring. But I think over time, because the relationship was so long and it never looked like they went back and rethought and challenged themselves to find new ways to amplify this partnership, it was just on autopilot. I'm not surprised that it went away based on some pressure, because it wasn't strong enough to withstand that. I didn't feel like Target was really invested in it to begin with. And that's okay. If anyone who works in corporate fundraising, everyone knows it's the most unreliable source of funding. And if you're lucky as a nonprofit, maybe 5% of your revenue can come from corporate entities. But it gets better. 70 to 80% of our annual revenue came through these brand partnerships. Oh. We had an amazing run that started with Rainbow Doritos. I don't know if you remember that. It was a campaign by Frito-Lay, PepsiCo. It was the one thing that breathed life into this organization after the original social media campaign was starting to wind down. PepsiCo came in with this campaign that generated over $100,000 for It Gets Better at the beginning stages of the golden era of cause marketing. It was just one partnership after the next. At our peak in this particular strategic focus, our cause marketing partnerships generated millions of dollars for this organization. Today, many of our partners are still with us, taking a more sophisticated approach to their philanthropy. They're looking at like, well, how does this serve the bottom line? How does this reflect our values? And is this something that is specifically for employee engagement purposes or for marketing and PR to elevate our brand? I think it's become more sophisticated, and many of our brand partners stayed with us. They just dialed back a little and are supporting us quieter.
Yeah.
It sucks. I love looking at our checking account with those campaigns. We're performing well, but I think that the LGBTQ plus community was critical of many of those brand partnerships that showed up during Pride, but we took the money anyways. And in many ways, we were responsible for fostering that relationship. The fact that we can be so up in arms when they go away just proves that we were right. Not all brand partners come to the table as allies. You know, they'll put a rainbow logo on their website, they'll take it down July 1st, and we were critical of that. But again, we took the money anyways. And now, should we be upset that those went away? I do everything I possibly can to take care of the brand partners that we have that are sticking around. And I don't care if they go up or down. I just want them to stick around. And I want to be able to help them navigate whatever sticky situation the community at large is going to throw their way, because it takes a while to develop these relationships and I hate to see them go away.
So going forward with the lessons that you've articulated, would you say that you would or would not require true allyship in a corporate partner?
Well, we talk about allyship, but how can we define that, right? We're defined by our response to obstacles and challenges. A partner might come in thinking they're an ally and being super excited about a partnership, only to realize that, oh, I didn't realize we needed a crisis PR strategy. Oh, I didn't realize that this was going to come up. And then all of a sudden they're like, maybe it's not worth it. And it's not that they don't necessarily believe in your mission or being an ally, but these corporations have a bottom line objective, right?
Sure.
They need to make money. And so
Yeah.
I think there's just a lot of unknowns, but it's how people, some of those brands are like, yeah, come at us. This is a partnership we believe in, and we don't care what you think. And others just go away.
This really
Can't
seems
get
to be
upset
tied up with I think I see a movement, some movement away from the shareholders' interest are the only thing we care about in terms of corporations, and that community interest actually matter too. In the for-profit sector, there seems to be a bit of movement that way. Give me your thoughts about the Jimmy Kimmel Disney thing, from the same perspective. Not that it's directly tied to your mission, but it's oblique to it, to be sure.
Yeah. I mean, look, the older I get, the less I feel like I know about the world. I thought I knew it all when I was in my 20s. And now I'm not so confident in that. I don't really have an opinion on it. I think that there's a lot of stories floating around, like ratings were dipping anyways, and this was just an excuse, or it's a violation of free speech. I just think that it's really difficult to understand what's really happening behind the scenes, because there are conversations taking place that no one was privy to, that weren't being reported on. In this day and age, it's very easy to go headline deep. Politicians and our elected officials love that, and they love to jump on every possible opportunity to pull themselves into the limelight. I think it was maybe a knee-jerk reaction that, after some thought and consideration, maybe there's some other changes that need to take place in how our media ecosystem is structured. I don't have a very specific passion answer about what happened.
I don't require passion on every answer, but I will get it on some for sure. Let me ask you this. What do you see as the greatest risk to your organization right now?
I think the greatest risk to my organization and to other like organizations is mission drift. Our board is comprised of some very passionate folks. Our audience, especially our youth ambassadors and so forth, they are very passionate and are very plugged into the world. And it's very easy to lose sight of your primary objective when you're constantly being taunted, teased, and baited to respond to things that are just a distraction. I think we have worked very hard to streamline our focus and our programming and to have conversations daily about our main priorities. To never forget that we are here for LGBTQ plus youth. And we can get upset about what's happening in the news, but we cannot constantly be in reactive mode to what's happening in the world. When the pendulum switches, then we've invested all of our energy into fighting this force that is no longer an adversarial concern. And then where are we? So like, it's all about, I think mission drift is a big concern, and organizations need to focus on what they do best and stay true to their mission. And hey, if this moment inspires a board of directors to say, hey, we're going to change our mission, we're going to change our vision, that's one thing. Do it strategically, thought out, and do it confidently and boldly. But for the organizations that are just trying to get their work done and are still invested in their mission and vision, just stay focused.
Has support emerged from any groups that surprised you? Has support emerged from unexpected places?
I wouldn't say unexpected, but I am actually very pleased with organizations driven by parents and caregivers. Groups like Pete Flag and Free Mom Hugs, Mama Dragons, and, especially at a time where there's a lot of conversations around parental rights and education that are divisive. I think it's really good to see the other side, there are parents out there that bring unconditional love to their families and can help other parents who might be struggling. Because look, I get it. Being a parent is tough. I made a conscious decision to not become a parent because I watched my friends raise their kids. And I was like, that is not for me. I will help young people from a distance, but it's hard being a parent. We've been doing this since the beginning of time. It's still hard. And we are feral when we are young and difficult. We do our best. And most of us are just winging it in our day-to-day lives. I have a lot of empathy for parents. Pour your need for control into trying to ban this book. Like, if that is what you need, but maybe there's some other perspectives that might help you understand that you're not alone and that there is a path through this where everyone comes out a winner. I really like what these parent groups are doing. Even the National PTA, it's important. When we talk about a young person's experience in school and bullying, but I think a lot of what young people struggle with, especially queer young people, starts at home. When there are strong relationships at home based on understanding, care, and love, it makes weathering those outside experiences in high school with bullies much easier to navigate. So
I'm going to give you a new title, Brian. It's going to be Everybody's Uncle. I like that.
I love being an uncle because kids are fun for a moment. I have nieces. And they're great. When they're old enough, I will happily bring them out to Los Angeles and give them the Hollywood experience.
I totally get that. I have 3 kids and I can affirm your feelings. My husband's a social psychologist, and we're sitting on the back porch one day talking about evolutionary pressure. I'm like, what is the evolutionary pressure for being gay? And he and I are looking at each other, and it came out of a conversation about community. It turns out that there's research on this. A high indicator of survivability is if you have a gay aunt or uncle, because they are like your third grandparent, which is a high indicator for survivability. And I'm like, there it is. That's what we say in the South. Yep. Anyway, I enjoyed
that.
Isn't that interesting? I'll dig out the link to that research and put it in show notes. But genesis of that conversation was about communities and why the most viable communities are about 150 people. Why is that? What's the evolutionary pressure on that? That's the level of intimacy that makes you care enough for one another to sacrifice for one another. I just thought that was really interesting. Anyway, moving on. I want to ask you about advocacy. Do you guys play in advocacy?
And how are you defining advocacy?
Pressure on government at any level.
No, we don't do that. And that's a choice, because the way that I see it It Gets Better is like a social movement. And
Hmm.
right now there are essentially two battles taking place. There are battles in the courthouse that are concretizing or defending our rights. And then there is the battle at the kitchen table
Mm.
that socially there needs to be some collective understanding or consensus that everyone deserves these kinds of rights. And without that, legislation can swing
Yes.
and change. We are focused on the kitchen table. But
Yeah.
but on top of that, when you know this as a parent, we grow up so fast. And sometimes changing legislation, introducing new legislation takes years and
Hmm.
time. And in that amount of time, a young person can go from 13 to 18 and be out in the world, and we've lost an opportunity to
Yeah.
nurture that soul in exchange for focusing on legislation. I say there are organizations that will do it much better than we will. Our superpower
I admire
is working
that.
with young people on the kitchen table.
I like that. To make the most unfortunate of comparisons, you're doing a quiver full of tolerant people who vote. So, you mentioned crisis plans in regard to corporate partners earlier. Do you have plans at the ready for anything? How do you prepare for the world today in which there are a lot of angry people pointed at you?
I think you just have to be adaptable. We try not to poke the bear
Mhm.
unnecessarily. If we are targeted specifically, we're going to respond in kind. I think you just have to be malleable and adaptable. We have
Mhm.
been very fortunate that, I feel like It Gets Better kind of flies just under the radar. There are larger organizations like Trevor Project, Glisten, GLAD, HRC that because of their visibility are a target. But we have to balance our desire to be in the spotlight versus what is best for the audience we're trying
Mm.
to support. And when you play in the social space like we do, we take a lot of care and we put a lot of energy into moderating our social channels to ensure that when a young person stumbles across them or comes to them directly, they're not going to be greeted by a bunch of vitriol. There is going to be some consistency in what they see from us. When we step out and we put our neck out there, it is purposeful and intended to improve upon what LGBTQ plus youth are experiencing and not just to be visible for the sake of being visible. Like we're very active on Twitch. I love that platform because it's highly moderated and people can connect in real time with people who are streaming, with people who are in the chat, and they can do so knowing that It Gets Better is in the background doing everything we can to make sure that all of the haters are out. Like no one is there to troll the audience. That gives us a lot more freedom to
Yeah.
engage with young people in meaningful ways.
Do you categorize that as a different program, that hovering you're describing? Do you have employees who just do that? Do you have volunteers who do that? How does that work?
You mean like in social, like the moderation
Yeah,
stuff,
like the
or
Twitch
just in general? So,
moderation. The reason I ask is that often I have found my nonprofit clients hesitate to do that or see it as necessary or they just don't devote
to,
resources to it.
to moderation,
Yeah.
and well, I guess it depends on what they're doing. We are targets sometimes, like we've been pulled into the spotlight for one reason or another. We have people on staff that do the day-to-day stuff. And when we have an event or a bigger experience, we will bring in volunteers. Sometimes we'll bring in other staff members that want to moonlight as a moderator for an
Mhm.
hour or two, or we bring in our youth ambassadors to do that. Sometimes it takes a village, but for the most part, there's just a couple people on a day-to-day basis keeping tabs on everything. Yeah.
When you bring in volunteers, do you have a set of training materials to help them understand what to do and what not to do?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. With platforms like Twitch, there are some great features that make moderation a lot easier. There are delays. So if someone posts something bad, it can
Mhm.
be removed before it even makes it into the chat. And that person can be removed as well. There are a lot
Love
of
it.
features that make moderation a little bit easier on Twitch.
My next question, you can say no to. Would you be willing to share your training materials for volunteers specifically?
For moderation
Yeah.
purposes,
Yeah. I have never seen a
sure.
set of training materials for volunteers to moderate online communities ever. And I'm old, like really old. So that's shocking to me because I've seen everything.
Well, I mean, we don't like the day-to-day channels like Instagram and
Mhm.
Facebook. You see some stuff and you just remove it and you delete it. I'll send whatever we have your way so you can take a look at what we do. Twitch is probably the most sophisticated.
Interesting.
And we try a lot of automation with certain words that are automatically flagged when posting comments. So yeah, happy to send it your way.
I would love to see that. Thank you. And with your
Yeah.
permission, I'll put it in the show notes if anyone wants to take a look and emulate your activities. Think about the social platforms and rank the danger they're in. Like, where's the scariest place for someone in your mission audience to spend time?
Well, honestly, all of them are problematic in some way. And there's been a lot of concern being voiced around platforms like Meta now opening the door to anti-trans rhetoric, things that by prior iterations of community engagement policies were not allowed. At the same time, the digital space is very important for LGBTQ plus people. It is a way to navigate the world with a high degree of anonymity, to try on different skins, if you will, to see how the world will react before you present in real life. I'm frustrated by it, but at the same time, I understand this is something that we have to recognize as the adults in the room, that this is what we need to take into consideration when exposing young people to social media. And, someone said to me once, like, when you're ready for your kid to grow up, just give them a phone, right? Just give them a smartphone. There's a lot of truth in that statement because we're not training young people how to navigate, how to understand, how to identify misinformation, how to recognize what is safe, what is not safe. It's trial by fire. And I think we have some work to do with how young people navigate the internet. There are kind of two sides to what organizations do to support queer youth. There are organizations that are trying to change the external world, trying to make the world an easier place for queer people to navigate. And then there are organizations that are trying to change how queer people understand and feel about themselves. I would position It Gets Better as a focus on the internal, not the external, because the external changes so frequently. If we can find ways to help young people maintain a sense of themselves and confidence, then maybe that's going to help them get through these ever-changing times. The world changes every day now.
I could ask you 15 more meaningless questions that would not elicit as pithy an answer as that. That was great. I am just pleased to have heard it. It gives me a lot of hope for the future. I love the way you articulate that and the way that you're presenting the organization. It's great. I feel better. I hope other people feel better after they listen to this.
It is the young people that engage with our organization, particularly like our youth ambassadors, our grantees, that give me hope, because young people are smart and we forget how in tune with the world we were when we were young. As the resident old person at my organization, we might not know everything when we're young, but we are hungry to learn about the world, develop our values, and build opinions. We do have valuable insights that a lot of adults just ignore. And, and trust, I've worked with some of our ambassadors. I'm going to give that opinion 5 years and see where you are with that. I love their enthusiasm for the world and to make it better. Anytime I engage with any of the young people that are participating in It Gets Better programming, I always leave with a refreshed sense of hope for the world. The children are our future, right?
Brian, everyone's uncle, Brian Winkie, Executive Director of It Gets Better. Thank you so much for being with me today. Katrina VanHuss, Seeding Social Good podcast. I am proud of you. Thank you for doing what you do. Change starts with just one person, and that person is you. If today's episode got your gears turning, share it with your network and drop us a review. That review helps more people find us and spread the good. Until next time, this is Katrina with Seeding Social Good. Stay inspired, keep making waves, and let's create a better world together.